You arrive at an eerie village filled with strange creatures occupying the place of its villagers. You are So, the protector of Yoshiro, a priestess of the mountain. Together, you two have the ability to purge the evil that has overtaken the mountain and its villages, leading you on your journey to save everyone overtaken by this great evil. However, the evil fights back. Before I begin, a huge thank you and shoutouts to my Patreon members. With their support, I'm able to produce these long-form videos. If you like my work, please consider supporting me on Patreon as well. Thank you so much if you do. Kunitsu-gami Path of the Goddess is a brand new title released by Capcom, and developed in-house with the RE engine. And this one actually caught me off guard, but this game was actually directed by RE4 and RE5 director Shuichi Kawada. The original RE4, by the way, not the new remake. When a company tries out something brand new from their already safe-to-play successful titles, please give me more of this. I am an absolute fan of new ideas and innovation, and Kunitsu-gami is an example of when you take a chance on those new ideas and it comes back rewarding you successfully. A huge congratulations to the team for selling over 500,000 copies. I was given a key for this game, so thank you to Capcom for letting me play this absolute hidden gem. My only hope now is to spread the word of this game more, as I enjoyed playing it immensely. The premise of Kunitsu is quite simple really. Yoshiro is the priestess of the mountain where the game entirely takes place on. The mountain has been consumed by an evil known as the Seath. The Seath corrupts and turns the inhabitants of the mountain, both humans and animals, into creatures from the creepy and grotesque side of Japanese folklore. Most, if not all, are based on yokai, the ghosts, monsters, and other supernatural beings of Japanese culture. Your goal is to once again purify the mountain of this evil and save the day. There's nothing too complex or intricate with the plot, but it's a good base to get us started. Before I talk further about the plot and to keep those from wanting to explore the story themselves, let's go over the gameplay. It is important to note that there is a demo, so if you want to try this firsthand, go play the demo, it's free. The gameplay is what took me by surprise. I was expecting some run-of-the-mill hack-and-slash action game, but instead I got something entirely different. It was a tower defense-like game with some real-time strategy added to it. And once again, I love it when something completely brand new and different takes to the stage. To win a level, you must guide Yoshiro to the end to purge the gate that plagues the area with evil. Yoshiro will move on her own, but only once you carve out a path for her. You can stop her in her tracks and she'll hold that position until you request for her to move once again, but she cannot retract her steps, so once she has moved, you better hope she's in a safe position for the night because she only moves during the day. The major game mechanic of the game includes a day and night cycle. As so, you're able to move around the levels yourself. During the day, you can go around and purge the defilement, as the game calls it, to free the corrupted villagers and assigning their roles for battle, placing them in strategic locations for the upcoming fight. You can also unlock rewards once you clear out the bigger defilements of an area. The rewards are items that can be equipped to give you bonuses such as increased HP or damage for you or your villagers. There is a large number of equipment, and I believe it goes up to nearly 70 or so there's a lot to collect. Next to that, during the day, you're able to find structures that, when fixed up, will lend you aid during battles. Things like barriers to stop the Seath from progressing temporarily, or towers for ranged units to increase the size of their attack range. Then at night, that's where the real battle begins. The time between night and day is about 4 minutes or so. You have to prep properly during the day because many of the features I mentioned earlier cannot be used during the night and you're forced to battle instead. You'll be greatly rewarded with a smooth battle if you used your time properly. One of the coolest parts of the game is being able to participate in the battles with the villagers, so you're able to cover some holes in your defense in case you happen to miss some. Various enemies of the night will come out charging to kill Yoshiro. So, and the villagers can die and will be temporarily taken out of the battle for a length of time, but if Yoshiro falls, the level is over. Your units are never glued to one position once they're deployed. You can move them freely at any time during the game, and you will end up moving them often, so be prepared for that. It's not just a simple stick them down and you're done. The gates from which the enemies spawn from will change in later levels, so just plopping them down in one section may not be enough. You'll get a variety of units to use, ranging from the basic melee woodcutters, archers for range, to unique pick units like sumo wrestlers who have the ability to draw aggro away from your team towards them instead. And once you survive the night, you progress Yoshiro to the end and make it out of the level as soon as you can. After beating a level, you'll see the hidden objectives which are now visible to help you go back and re-clear under said conditions for additional rewards. Completely optional, no need to go back if you don't want to, but highly recommended as you may get the musubi, the upgrading material for you or your units. Once you've cleared the level, you can go back and repair the area for its villagers. Using the villagers you saved, you can set them on a track to restoring their life back. It gives you the sense that life is returning to normal after the nightmare it was put through. Repairing the villages will net you some goodies, including some things to read about the lore of the game such as the villager jobs, the Seath monsters themselves, food for Yoshiro to munch on, and musubi once again to upgrade your skills or your units. When you start the game, your only job you have for villagers is woodcutter, but you'll unlock more as you progress. A bit later in the game, So will have the ability to be upgraded as well, having access to his bow and its upgrades such as explosive arrows or sticky spider web to immobilize enemies. He'll have access to his alternate version of his dance attacks and so on. And best part, at any point if you felt like you made a mistake in your own upgrades or upgrading the wrong units such as the thief unit, I'll get more into that later, you can get a refund at any time giving you all your points back. So it never feels like you have to make an important decision at any moment, things can be altered at any time. Now talismans were the equipment that I mentioned earlier. These give you passive bonuses for either your villagers or So. Eventually when you upgrade So, you'll be able to equip 5 talismans at once. Oh, and some of the passives may include things like Yoshiro being taken out in one hit. These are typically used to be a challenge, don't just equip these for no reason. For most levels, they're followed up by a boss stage. The level you just completed is usually a test before you fight the boss using what you learned previously. And some of the boss stages can be quite challenging. Normal stages will sometimes feature special conditions. Some of these special conditions include fights that take place entirely on boats, fighting in dark caves where you must light the way as you go, and where So cannot participate directly and you must command your team only to victory. All of these challenges will constantly test and push you to think differently with each encounter. For those that think this game is a bit overwhelming and a lot of pressure, don't fret too much. Outside of optional challenges, you're never rushed to complete levels as fast as you can, so you can take a number of days and nights to complete levels, taking it as slow as you want to. The game itself is impressive. You will not be disappointed by the presentation. If the visuals are too much for your computer, you can turn it to performance mode. To which, yes, I actually had to change it to performance mode while I recorded gameplay, but outside of gameplay, it ran really fine. Within the village, it is thankfully nothing but peace, and you can walk around taking in the area, giving us a good glimpse at the quiet and quaint countryside life of Japan. At night, during the levels, you'll be thrown into a nightmare version of the world teeming with ghastly monsters. The unusual colors of the night, which are a huge leap from the peaceful green, gives me an uncanny feeling. It makes me feel sick, but not to the point of nausea, but the feeling like I need to get the heck out of here as soon as possible. You are definitely not a resident of this nightmare, and it'd be wise for you to leave before your mind starts to get even more under fire by the attacks of the world. The designs of the monsters won't make you jump out of your seat scared, but rather they give you a creepy, unsettling feeling because of their disfigured and nasty appearances. This game excels at making you feel uncomfortable and pushes you to escape as soon as you can. And the music is honestly one of my favorite parts about this game. It's not just a background piece, but it plays an integral role. During the actual levels, the day features a quiet theme that gradually gets more unnerving as the night approaches, reminding you that your time is short and you need to prep as quickly as you can before the night approaches. And once the night has arrived, the battle theme starts. The drums start thundering, switching up the energy from preparing and waiting to a straight up war, instantly putting you on high alert for the attack to come. And a really cool feature is how the music ties in with the gameplay. You have your standard battle music, but when a unique enemy shows up, it starts to add a unique sound or alters the music slightly, alerting you to their presence so you can think fast before they come knocking at your defense. One of my favorite but also dreaded examples is this large tanky enemy with a gong on his head. And once you've heard a gong in the distance, he's arrived and he can easily demolish your front line if you're not ready. The night will not go quietly, and that's for sure. Outside of battle though, the music when rebuilding villages is quite peaceful. Definitely a nice tune to listen to after you just went through hell. The game's central core is heavily influenced by not just music but also by dance as well. The Japanese folk dancing is a major component of the game. In the culture of Japan, some of the folk dances were said to have an origin closely connected to Buddhism. It was believed that some of these dances had an influence on certain aspects of life, whether it be relating to the weather, honoring the spirits of the dead, or many other ideas. So's prominent damage-dealing attacks are composed of dancing. The villagers and Yoshido dance at the end of the level to purge the evil away. The dancing is incorporated within the game well enough to not be too tacky, cheesy, or overstay its welcome. It becomes an endearing part of the game, and seeing the villagers dancing happily when the day is saved is kind of cute to watch. Now, normally in my long-form video of games, I love to do a comprehensive overview of the game itself and then diving right into the story. However, with Kunitsu, there's not really much of a story to be had. Like, really, the premise was all explained at the beginning of the video, and the backstory of the game is explained within a YouTube video that was made in collaboration between Capcom and the National Bunraku Theater, a famous theater located in Osaka, Japan, known for putting on performances ranging from dance, music, and bunraku, a traditional puppet show. The performance in collaboration with Capcom tells the story of the events leading up to Kunitsu. The people of the mountain relied on the blessing of the god. The blessing helped the people with their luck and fortunes. However, they became too greedy and defiled the mountain in favor of riches. In turn, they started accumulating sin. The sin then manifests itself into a tangible evil known as the Seath, which began to corrupt and change people into the defiled forms later. The maiden then appears to try to converse with the Seath to stop, but the Seath is convinced that the humans are unable to drop their greedy nature and proceeds to continue its attack. On her own, the maiden is unable to stop the Seath, but with So, they can defeat the evil together. The performance can be found on YouTube, so I highly encourage you guys to go watch that because it's free and it's a really nice performance to watch. Besides that, the game doesn't have much of a story. Besides your goal of trying to purify the mountain, that's pretty much all there is to go off of. There's not too much dialogue between characters, and the Seath are really your only enemy that you ever face. It's a very simplistic story, but that doesn't make it bad. The rest of the game still holds up very well. So for me, the need for an elaborate story with twists and turns doesn't need to be here at all. To beat the game, it took me roughly around 20 hours or so. There are a few incentives to keep playing the game after you've completed it, but they're kind of spoiler related, so I won't say anything more than that. I'll be explaining what I can and going through my experience with Kunitsu. So with that, it's time for the story spoilers, so this is your last chance to dip out as I talk about the plot of Kunitsu-gami, Path of the Goddess. The game opens up with the Seath beginning their attack on the mountain and its inhabitants, and unfortunately, most are powerless to fight back. Yoshido acts quickly and summons So to aid in the battle, making his way to the summit. This serves as a tutorial controlling So as he fights his way to the summit to rendezvous with the villagers and Yoshido. Once So reaches the top, the battle seems to go in their favor. That is until Batsu appears. It's a large monster that, to me, resembles a dog. Batsu fights in an unpredictable and vicious manner, quickly demolishing our front lines. Everyone but So and Yoshido are instantly defeated and turn into a creepy cocoon form, thus surviving to retreat, letting the Seath claim victory for today. Alongside spreading the defilement, the Seath were able to claim the mask of the villagers that were created to represent the different ancestral deities. These masks were important as they granted strength to the villagers, and without them the Seath would just overpower anyone who fights against them. Our goal? Reclaim the mask and purge the evil from the mountain. In our first level, Yoshido is showing signs of weakening, but with So's help she's able to continue for now. Luckily, we do have one mask to help us fight the Seath. The Woodcutter Mask, our basic melee unit. Not exactly the most powerful unit to use in the game, but in great numbers they'll make an excellent defensive line. And the first of many enemies we'll encounter in the first level is the Gaki, a weak melee based enemy. And much like the Woodcutter, their strength lies in numbers. In larger groups they can easily overwhelm our defense, so make sure to take them out as soon as you can. And after clearing the first level, we get access to the first base. You typically want to start repairing the bases between each level until you get it to 100%. Also, pet the dogs along the way. We also gain access to the Suba guards now, and these essentially are powerful attacks that you can execute once they're off cooldown. You start off holding only one, but you can eventually hold up to 3. And let me tell you guys, these will be absolutely important in fights to come later. Our first boss is the Gakken Yudo, which is an overgrown, ugly Gaki enemy. He's very easy because we have nothing but woodcutters, and the best strat is to pretty much send everyone in to fight him. It is important to note though that every single boss has a major mechanic where they're able to summon enemies to rush to Yoshido. So you have to do a dance between offensive and defensive play. The best way to beat him though is to spam our Suba Guard skill. Our first Suba Guard skill is the Suzaku's Flame. With this, you can practically deplete all of the enemy's stun resist gauge and you're able to leave them open for big attacks. Unfortunately for this boss, he'll soon be downgraded into a normal spawn later in the game, so he loses his uniqueness. And typically after beating a boss, we get a mask back. In this case, we get the Archer's Mask. With this, we'll be adding some range to our units. On our second level, we encounter the Carpenter, who can repair traps and structures for battles. But at night, he just runs away and hides, so he's practically useless during the night. It does take some time to build things, so make sure to send him out during the day and use him as much as you can. An added twist to the level is that you'll have 2 gates to purge rather than 1, so you'll be doing a bit more fighting than the first level. And as you proceed in the game, you'll have some new challenges to keep testing you as you keep playing. To test our new archers, we have 2 new enemies to face. The Shibakai are ranged ground enemies that act as the opposite to archers, and the Hitoban are flying enemies that have the ability to temporarily stun your units until they're defeated. The next boss we face is the Kamai Tachi. It's an airborne boss with scythes for hands. And much like the Gakken Yudo, this boss will also be downgraded into a normal enemy spawn later, so sad for this guy. Defeating this boss will give you the Ascetic Mask, a new unit that can slow down enemies in their range. Initially, I dismissed this as not being so useful, but it turns out it's really good to use. Level 3 takes us to a cave where the new mechanic is to light up these lamps. While So does come with a little light source around him, the villagers are blind without light, so they'll need it more than you. Here we find the new enemy, the Rosokuro. He's able to buff his allies, so if you get rid of him quickly, they'll be less of a threat. Taking what we learned about lights, the next boss is the Mukade Joro, a large worm-like boss that proved to be a very annoying threat. He snuffs out the light and leaves you in the dark, and the best way to deal with him is to send your units to go light the lamp so that way he's stunned by the light so you can do some damage. But he won't make it easy, so good luck with this fight. Defeating the boss will award us with the Thief Mask. This is a special unit that actually doesn't fight. Instead, they go around collecting crystals and digging up buried treasure. I'm not too sure how I completely feel about this unit. Although they can help you gather resources and crystals mid-battle once upgraded, that's pretty much all they're good for. The usual strat would be to have them uncover treasures, then swap over to a combat-based job, so yeah, take it as you will. The next level throws us the biggest surprise yet. Yoshiro starts to feel more pain from her injuries. As we complete more levels, she absorbs the Seathed energy. The further we progress on our journey, the more suffering she'll feel. So is connected to her, and because of this, So will start to lose their physical form. This time in this level, you need to prep properly because So will be unable to participate during the battle. Once night has arrived, Yoshiro will be attacked and possessed by the Hidaru-gami. This enemy will prevent Yoshiro from summoning So, and to stop it, we need to collect enough crystals to purge it away. You'll still be able to command your units, just make sure they can fend for themselves properly without your help directly. Once enough crystals have been gathered, Yoshiro will be saved and So will be back in action. But this will be the start of all the troubles that will happen later. We also obtain the Sumo Mask, a tanky unit that can draw the eye of enemies towards him instead. The next level introduces the Gotai Men, which is honestly one of the more annoying enemies of the game. They're basically the artillery for the enemies. If Yoshiro's within their range, he'll take a large amount of damage from afar, so handle them quickly. We also start to see branching pathways now. Both pathways will lead to the same end goal, so choose whatever you think is best for defending Yoshiro. We also run into the Hozukime, which will either be your best friend or worst enemy. The Hozukime will turn red and explode shortly after taking damage, but if you defeat it before it explodes, it'll instead turn blue. In this state, they can be pushed around like a football and will only hurt your enemies instead of you and your allies. An excellent way to deal with crowds, but not so excellent when it blows up your defense. Now finally, for the next boss. We face off against the Surube Otoshi, another flying-based boss. And I'll be real, not much else to say. All he does is pretty much just ram himself into the ground trying to damage you and your team. He gets downgraded into a normal spawn later, so sad for this guy as well. Defeating this will net you the Shaman Mask, which are the healers of the game. And they are absolutely one of the most essential units to have, and I recommend you have them as much as possible and level them up as soon as you can. The only noteworthy thing between now and the next boss is the Enenena. The Enenra. Forgive me, this one's a bit hard to say, but this enemy is able to basically run away from the field and infect So with the Defilement state. While in the Defile state, you'll be unable to heal and command villagers. I usually end up hunting this enemy while letting my team defend Yoshiro. The next boss, though, is a familiar one. It's Batsu. He's back. The large monster dog is back and it's time to settle the score. He's fast and he comes equipped with powerful AoE attacks. Outside of that, just command everyone to be careful and you'll be fine. Defeating Batsu gets us the Spearman Mask. Think of them as another melee option. They don't outright replace the woodcutters, but they have a longer reach for attacks. And finally, I don't know why they waited so long for this, but after beating Batsu, you have the ability to upgrade So as well. Upgrades includes the use of bows and their upgrades, a punishing move for stunned enemies for massive damage, increasing your talisman and Suba guard limit, and this was something I didn't really invest too much into, but you can actually command your units through a menu instead of having to individually pick each one. Definitely a quality of life upgrade, but not something that I totally needed during my playthrough. And just like the villager upgrades, no upgrades are permanent, so feel free to play around and move things wherever you want them to be. Because of this, I really appreciate Kunitsu for allowing us to upgrade, reset, and mix things around and not suffer because you invested too many points into upgrading the thief and they're absolutely useless. And if you did that, I'm so sorry for you. The next level is perhaps one of my favorites of all time. It starts off with you needing to prepare as normal, but once night hits, you're traveling by boat. The entirety of the level is played on interconnected boats with the Seath attacking from all sides, and the music is just so good. When traveling by sea, the area around you is covered in a blanket of darkness. It is hard to see. The level also features these exclusive large sea enemies that carry the smaller guys on their backs. Oh, and if you don't stop these larger guys in time, they can capsize your boat, so kill them as soon as possible. And for some reason on this level, when the sun finally rises and the enemies are disappearing because there's no more darkness, it feels more satisfying and more prominent than the other levels before. I am a huge fan of the sea levels. I need more of this, please. The level after introduces the wickedly cool Shiniku Samurai, and as the name kind of implies, this is a cool samurai enemy who is tough to defeat. Also, his design kind of goes hard, like multiple knives stuck in his head, quite a way to strike fear on the first impression. The Burial Grounds is a special level. Now, usually the game tells you how many villagers are going to be there to assist you. This time though, there are none. You have to defend Yoshido on your own alongside with the carpenter and traps. Utilize your time wisely during the day to create traps to assist with defending, or else you'll get overwhelmed easily. Some traps have the ability to slow down the thief's advance or do damage. We also have a cannon, but it has a really long cooldown, so use it at the right moment. After completing the level, one may try and repair the village, but when trying to assign villagers, you may notice that you're met with a pretty ominous message that reads, "There is no sign of villagers. What happened to them?" I'd be lying if I said this didn't freak me out the first time I played this, so where are they exactly? The next boss follows the same theme of you defending Yoshido on your own, and it's a showdown between you and Bupotso, a large menacing sword-wielding Seath. And this level had me pretty excited. A proper one-on-one with an enemy that poses a real threat. He'll block your attacks, leap around the field, and overall give you a hard time. He's no pushover. As you whittle down his HP, around the 25% mark, he abandons his sword for an Adachi, an even larger sword. His swings can produce a sword beam projectile, making him even deadlier from afar. Overall, the music, the battle were all fantastic, and it was a satisfying fight from start to finish. Defeating him frees the villagers, so you're finally able to go back and fix up the village. And we've unlocked the matchlock rifle wielding marksmen. They can deal more damage and have a larger range than archers, but at the cost of having a slower rate of fire, which is a really cool thing I like about this game. Some units don't just get outright replaced, so archers still have a place within our team. And now for the worst news. It's clear that Yoshido is greatly affected by the defiled energy that she keeps absorbing. Her appearance starts to darken and she'll look this way for the rest of the game. Purifying the defilement comes at a cost, and Yoshido is now feeling the brunt of it. But with no way to save her now, we have no choice but to keep moving. If you're a Souls game fan, you'll love this next level because it's a poison swamp. Oh, and I also hope you're a fan of the Hidaru-gami because he's back again. This time, however, he's able to possess your own units, so not that much of a problem, but just defeat him sooner than later. Clearing the level removes the poison from the swamp and it becomes just clean water. And to kind of follow in the same suit, the next boss has a poison theme to it as well, the Notsugo. There are cannons located throughout the map, so just use those to easily stun the boss and kill him fast. He's not that tough. Defeating this large frog gets us the Mask of the Priest, and honestly, one of the more useless jobs of the game. The priests are able to dispel the enemy buffs cast by the Rotsuko, but that's all they can really do. I advise skipping out on using these guys. As we enter the next level, Yoshido's condition worsens. So's physical form will not last during this level, and just in time for a villager-only defending level. Personally, I really enjoy these levels. It's a real test of whether your units are trained enough to deal with the Seath on their own. I kind of feel like a proud parent knowing that my units can handle the Seath on their own without So's help. Once the night has arrived, Yoshido's corruption not only cuts off her connection to So, but it also starts to affect her physically. She's unable to walk as easily as before, leaving her stuck in the middle of the town right before the Thief's attack. We need to gather up enough crystals and feed them to Yoshiro to save the day. To add to the challenge, there are multiple gates where the Thief will come from, and it'll change between waves, so you'll need to move your team around often. After a few waves, you'll hear a loud gong sound, and this marks the appearance of one of the toughest enemies yet, the Noderabu. He's completely armored up on his front side, so you'll have to maneuver around and give him some back shots as that's his weakness. And he packs quite a punch and will rip through your team once he hits your front lines. Once the level is completed, we find a nearby shrine that has a small carriage to help Yoshiro move around. This is how she'll progress in levels from here on out. It's clear the further we progress with purging the Defile, the more it'll negatively affect her. It seems as if there's no other way that we know of to stop this, so we can only hope we can end this all before she's hurt any further. And she'll retain this look for the rest of the game, and it's sad to see every time we need to save the game or upgrade things. The next level is actually a boss stage in disguise. Whether you progress Yoshiro close enough to the gate or night falls first, the tree in the center will awaken. It'll drop these pod-like structures that'll spawn the Thief. There are 3 stages to this fight. The first 2 are similar. Simply climb up on the scaffolding and defeat the tree's weak points. Now, unless I'm dumb, what the game fails to tell you is that you could sort of do a double jump on the scaffolding. I had to look this up in order to progress. During stage 2, a large ghost-like enemy appears, and much like the first stage, find and defeat the weak points, but this ghost will viciously defend said points, and she hurts. She can typically kill me within like 2 to 3 hits. To make things worse, you have a long respawn time, and it's a painfully long wait until you can finally get back up and beat the second stage. So, ignore her, dodge her attacks until you're finally done with stage 2. And at the final stage, we face the tree itself, the Yatsurao. And it functions much like any other boss before, so just bait its attacks and attack the weak points. Oh, if you happen to die at any point during the final stage, consider that a game over, as the boss will simply just ram into Yoshiro and kill her instantly. It was an interesting boss, and I would be lying if I said it didn't frustrate me as I fought it. Even though the day is saved, we see Yoshiro's corruption spreading further, and this may not end well for her journey. On the bright side, we unlock the Cannoneer job, which is a really fun job to use, dealing AoE range damage. I'll be skipping over the next 2 levels as there's nothing too important to highlight about them. It's a boat level and a standard one after. Both are really fun despite that though. Just thought it'd be in the best interest of the video's length to move on. So we're at the next boss, the Raikobo. And he's really tough. He has a large amount of swinging attacks that can easily swat you and your teammates around. He has a deadly lightning attack that will decimate anything in its path. In fact, one of his moves involves summoning lightning rods that'll direct lightning towards Yoshiro. Failing to break up the rods will result in an instant loss. Emerging victorious will reward us with the Sorcerer's Mask, which is probably one of the best masks in the game. Sorcerers are able to deal a large amount of damage that can basically clear the screen of all Thief. The downside though is that they cannot attack outside of this powerful move and will require a long time to charge it. But with more Sorcerers, the charge time will be shortened. The one thing I'll highlight about the next level is that we're in another cave and we have a new enemy. The Hike Shibaba are a new enemy that are able to extinguish the lamps that we light up. And that's pretty much it, so take them out as soon as possible so you have less lamp management to deal with. And for our 10th boss of the game, the Yatsukahagi, which is by far one of the most annoying bosses of the game. His boss music is kind of goofy sounding to add to the wackiness of this boss, spending a majority of the battle running around the map and avoiding direct combat, being more of a nuisance than danger. The major gimmick of the fight is having to kill him but also deal with a large amount of powerful Thief summoned to rush down Yoshiro. After finally defeating this annoying boss, we get the Ninja Mask. A powerful unit that's able to act on its own, moving around, attacking with both melee and ranged. They can be good, but they also can get themselves into a lot of trouble when they're in the wrong spot and getting surrounded by a bunch of Thief, for example. Yoshiro's form is starting to crystallize further, but we're at the doorsteps of the final part of the game. We need to make our way up to the summit. Now, unfortunately for me, this summit climb is nothing too exciting to talk about, and that's really not my favorite thing about games. It's really just a boss rush of all the previous bosses we fought before that were unique and don't get downgraded. I'm typically not a huge fan of boss rushes. I'd rather just face something new, but it is what it is. Once you've made it past the climb, it's time for the final boss of the game. We've returned to the spot where we failed last time, but now we're ready with the mask to face off against the final boss and end this nightmare. And a really cool detail, I really like how they lined up our units on the sides. It feels like a really cool send-off before we fight the final boss. I don't know, pretty stupid to get excited about, but I thought it was really cool. And once you're all ready, you walk up to face the Nanamagari. At first, to me, he didn't seem that intimidating, and he reminded me of a chicken, I don't know why, but this boss is pretty tough. He deals a lot of damage and comes with a lot of abilities that might take you by surprise if you're not ready. While he is tough, the second phase gave me much more trouble. Once you've depleted the health bar, phase 2 begins. He'll instantly kill all of your units, and it's a 1v1 between you and him. And at this point, I was mostly focused on using my units and having to fight alongside them and making them strong rather than working on my So this fight easily took me a few hours because I simply was not good at using So. I lacked experience with guarding with him, dodging attacks, and having the other upgrades that would make this fight a lot easier, like the Punishing Strike. The Nanamagari was also practically one-shotting me, and with no other villagers to stall the boss until I got back up, he beelines straight for Yoshido and it's game over. Thankfully, when you do lose during this fight, you just restart at phase 2, but sadly for me, I was already off to a bad start and lacked skill, so I had to go back and restart the whole entire last segment anyways. After many tries and hours, I finally swallowed my pride and stopped being stubborn and restarted the whole level and came back with better equipment and upgraded my better skills. I had a fighting chance against the final boss, but there was a small trick he pulls on you when you least expect it. Once you knock his HP past down the 50% mark, his attacks will become deadlier with some variations. There's a bit more unpredictability, and his big homing ball attack will actually speed up suddenly. So at the 50% mark, I decided to spam all of my best moves and defeat him as fast as I can before he can do any of his second phase dangerous moves. And finally, after many attempts, he's done. The final boss of the Seath is vanquished, but just as we defeat him, Yoshido absorbs a large amount of energy, to the point of completely crystallizing her. The Defile is purged away, but at the cost of what it seems to be Yoshido's life. In the final scene where we see Yoshido, she appears to be in some otherworldly place. Meeting up with So once more, she touches So's mask, and it reveals that So was actually a woman this whole time? And So kind of resembles her a little bit, so the big twist here is that she might have been some kind of part of Yoshido. So disappears, and the next shot reveals that Yoshido completely crystallized, now becoming a statue to be honored by the villagers of the mountain. All isn't lost, however. It seems that the villagers are resuming their life from before. But just before the game wraps up, we get a shot of what appears to be So's feet, still alive. And then the game ends there. A bittersweet ending to a story that wasn't too highly elaborate. But it does give us a lot of questions as to what the hell just happened. Like, why did So live but Yoshido didn't? Wasn't So tied to Yoshido, so maybe she gave up her life not just to save the village, but also to give So a life as well. After the credits, we're treated to an image of two figures, one being So and the other obscured by darkness that kind of looks like So? Yoshido narrates saying that although humans do sin, that is what it means to be a human. We get a final bit of goodies like a musician to change the music in villages and talismans to spice up replay. Overall, the game itself is a great play. I enjoy my time immensely, and I guess the game might have heard me talking about this because there is a New Game Plus option, and if you think that's it for the game, well, you're mistaken. There is one more big secret once you beat the game on New Game Plus, so let me go over a few changes before I finally get to that final secret. In New Game Plus, pretty much everything you've unlocked and upgraded is kept. The only thing that doesn't stay, of course, are the levels that you need to re-unlock when you play through the game once more, but other things like collectibles and the village repairs are all going to be kept upon changing over to New Game Plus. This time, though, the tougher enemies that came later in the game will spawn as soon as the first level starts, so you won't have just the Gaki to fight. Thankfully for us, the playing field is evened out so you can actually use your stronger units sooner. The game will also throw extra challenges for you to unlock more Musubi for upgrades or other unlockables. A common reoccurring challenge now in most levels is being the levels within a certain amount of nights. Other than that, the game largely remains the same as your first playthrough, but the real difference comes in once you beat the final boss. Once the Nanamagari is defeated, we get a different scene than before. Instead of simply disappearing, its stomach starts to produce some kind of weird black substance as he disappears. A dark figure appears resembling So, runs up on Yoshido before retreating. This must be the other person that we saw that was on that image with So. It's time to give chase. We enter the final area of the game, the Unknown Land. We prep our team and head into a similar looking area from the game's first ending with all the water around us. So lights up the room in a cool sword motion, and soon we realize So's reflection isn't what it seems. The reflection jumps out and it appears to look like a more menacing version of So. It shows that it possesses all of the abilities that So has, but with Yoshido's help, she seals them away. This is Cursed So, the true final boss of the game. You've ever fought the final boss of a game and realized they're a complete pushover and it was underwhelming? Yeah, not this guy. Cursed So is basically you but on drugs, and the fight is split up into multiple phases. Every time you shave off about 25% of his HP, he'll swap into the next phase. Thank God for us, on phase 1 it only uses its sword first, but if your units are not properly positioned, it'll just cut through your units like grass. On phase 2, it'll gain archery, so it'll be even more of a threat than before. Also, it has the sickest phase transition I've ever seen on a boss. Like, this is pretty badass. But what's not badass is how fast this thing can kill you. It fires different types of arrows, so make sure you know how to dodge properly. One wrong dodge and it's pretty much game over. If you go down, Cursed So will walk over to your team, slaughter them, and then finish the fight off by actually slowly walking over to Yoshido, charge up their blade, and one-shot her. It's the most over-the-top thing I've seen in this game, and it feels terrible to see every single time because it just happens basically in slow-mo. So if you think the final boss was rough, this boss ramps up difficulty by like 1 million. I'm not even joking. It even has access to your Suba Guard abilities. Yes, when I said this boss has all your attacks, it really does. Your team will fall over like paper as you progress because in this fight, his attacks are that powerful, and there's not many ways to revive your team that easily. After so many hours and many attempts, I could not do this fight on my own. So I took a game-winning plan from the Gamer website, and shoutouts to the author Hilton Webster for this amazing strat. The team composition is as followed. 1 spearman and woodcutter as your first line of defense, 1 archer, marksman, and cannoneer, 1 ascetic to slow down enemies, and also this will affect Cursed So, and 1 sumo to draw aggro away, a ninja to help roam and fight, and lastly, the biggest part to all of this is to have 4 sorcerers to charge up their powerful attack quickly. It won't one-shot Cursed So, but every time you use it, it will take off a massive amount of HP from him. Make sure all of these jobs are upgraded and you're good to go. Command everyone to stand off to the side of Yoshido but not next to, as you don't want her to accidentally get hit by the attacks. And this is by no means an easy way to beat the level. You'll still need to play carefully because a majority of the time you're practically soloing Cursed So. Play extremely cautiously or else one wrong move can end up in disaster. Outside of the fight itself, the final battle is just beautiful. The location, the music, what's at stake, the battle, these are all framed so well for a perfect showdown between you and evil. And also, the design of Cursed So is actually amazing. I find it intimidating, but yet captivating. On the final phase, the boss will be able to summon a weak clone to help it fight. Take care of the clone whenever you can because it can sneak up on you and do a lot of damage. And the music starts going into a more somber tone. The piano kicks in and it's a familiar tune of the game's motif, but a bit more muted. The end of the fight is approaching, and if I focus up, this will be the end of the game, and I don't want it to end just yet. With one final punishing strike, Cursed So was finally brought to an end. So themselves seems to be absorbing the light in the area, and with that light, they're able to free Yoshido from her crystallized state. This time instead though, So is the one that ends up disappearing, leaving Yoshido behind. Yoshido rejoins the village, and its people return the various artifacts we've gathered in our journey to its rightful place, possibly marking an end to the sea for good as we won't need the artifacts anymore. Yoshido performs a beautiful dance to celebrate the hard-earned victory, and the day is saved. And with that, that is the true ending to Kunitsu-gami, Path of the Goddess. After the credits, we have a new scene with Yoshido saying the fight is finally over. Now, you can go back into New Game Plus again, but story-wise, there's not much else to be told. New Game Plus remains largely the same again, but if one was to complete the game 9 times over or so, from what I've heard, you can actually unlock the Cursed So skin for your own use. I think I'll pass on it though for now. I think that's too many playthroughs just for one skin. That aside, the game does a beautiful job of giving us an insight at some Japanese folklore. The music and the dancing were beautifully done, giving me more of an appreciation of their culture than I already had. I was able to complete Kunitsu after 30 hours, and honestly, that is a good enough playtime for me. It's a brand new idea that doesn't overstay its welcome or make you play more than you already need to. I will say though, going through New Game Plus just to encounter Cursed So and the true ending was a bit too much, but I am satisfied with the ending and the accomplishment of beating Cursed So because that fight was not easy by any means. All in all, Kunitsu is an amazing title, and I'm so glad it had a chance to shine, and I hope others do give this game a try themselves. The game's theme, setting, and real-time strategy gameplay are always a welcome in my opinion. As much as I like old beloved franchises getting new entries, I love seeing brand new ideas, and I believe we should give them a shot to succeed more often. With that said, thank you guys for watching, and here's hoping we see more unique titles like this one day.